My name is Shannon. I am the organizer of FMA Freelance Fest. I'm here with Dr. Alice Driver. We're really excited to have you. So we are going to, I just want to give you a quick heads up, FMA Freelance Fest. We're really happy that you guys have tuned in for this talk. We also have a couple more coming up, so make sure you pay attention to our events page and our webpage. And I want to thank our sponsors, SPJ Florida and SPJ Region 3. We really appreciate you. And just keep in mind that we want to leave questions till the end. You're more than welcome to send them my way during the talk, and then we'll have Dr. Driver answer them toward the end of the talk. And real quick, just to introduce our lovely host here, Dr. Alice Driver is based in Mexico City. She is a 2017 Images and Voices of Hope Restorative Narrative Fellow. She is a 2017 Foreign Policy Interrupted Fellow. She is also the author of More or Less Dead, Feminicide, Haunting, and the Ethics of Representation in Mexico. Her work has been published by the New York Times, Oxford American, Nat Geo, World Policy Journal, The Guardian, and Al Jazeera English, among others. So I'm going to go ahead and let her take it away. So, hi, welcome. Go ahead, Alice.
Thank you, Shannon. I really appreciate it. I wanted to start out just giving a little bit of background because I've seen some of the other talks and I thought it was really interesting that they shared their history and their relationship to writing. I was an academic. I got a PhD in Latin American Studies. So I've always been writing, but I didn't start freelancing until I finished my PhD, which was in 2012. And so I've had a lot of time to sort of learn through failure about how to freelance better. And I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned from that. The first thing I've learned, which I've seen some other presenters talk about, is that, and this is, I think, really hard for creative people like myself, I was an English major as an undergrad, is that freelancing is a business. And if you're going to freelance, unless you have a trust fund or parents are going to bail you out when you go broke, you have to treat it like a business. And I think that's really hard because a lot of people get used to working for free, working for exposure. You think, oh, it's my passion, so I'm gonna contribute, for no money. And you really have to get out of that mindset in order to be successful. Before I started freelancing, I do a lot of different things in freelancing. I translate, I edit, I work in video production. So I have sort of a lot of different things that I do in order to sort of pay the bills, because writing long form, which is what I love, sometimes I have, really big projects and sometimes I have no projects. So I saved about 6 months of money. I would recommend 6 months to 1 year. You want to budget for wherever you're living. I'm living in Mexico City. Because, for example, right now in the past 6 months, I've had nonstop work and no one has paid me. No, I think I have about $10,000 worth of work that is owed to me right now. So if I didn't have savings, I would be, going crazy at this point. And also in terms of being prepared, you should think about fellowships. You should have clients lined up. I mean, you don't want to go into this blind, like, oh, I think I'll freelance, because it's going to be really, really hard. And also think about safety and preparation. There's a lot of different organizations that offer fellowships for trainings, and you want to go in, especially if you're working in conflict or human rights and things like that. You want to be able to take care of yourself and your colleagues. So in terms of savings, as I said, you want to have money saved before you start doing this, because you really, even if you have a lot of work, you really usually, I would say you should just expect you'll get paid, probably 6 months out for most things you're doing. So you need to be able to be calm and not harass your editors and all of that. And insurance is another area of preparation. I've tried to freelance multiple times. In the past, when I've gone to Mexico and started freelancing, I didn't have the money I didn't have insurance for my camera gear. I didn't have national health insurance. And I understand that often freelancers have very little money, but you really should, if you can, be prepared. Right now I have camera insurance, or camera gear insurance, and computer insurance through a company called TCP. There's several others, but that's the one I'm using right now just because I guarantee you that, within the next 6 months to a year, someone will probably steal my camera in Mexico. I mean, it's a given, I think. So I wanted to not be worried about that, and also not to depend on other people, because I've seen a lot of freelancers have their gear stolen or something, and then they go online and they ask everyone to donate money to them. And I understand that, but I think it's very irresponsible to go out into an international environment with, $5,000-$10,000 worth of gear and not have it insured, and then expect other people to pay for that. Same goes for insurance. You need to stay healthy, and so that's something that you should take care of as well. Before I started freelancing, I applied for probably 10 to 15 fellowships, because I wanted to. A fellowship really gives you time, space, and money to work on a big project. Let's see. Sorry, my webcam. Okay, that should. Can everyone still see my presentation? Hopefully. Here we go. Sorry. So in terms of fellowships, and this is for trainings, for writing projects, for photography, there's really a lot of opportunities, and it's good to apply. It's good to get rejected, and it's good to know, what the process is like. And often you need an editor who will recommend you. So you want to have good relationships with editors. Here we go. Okay, here are some fellowships specifically for women. Some of them are specifically for women, and others are trainings. And all of these are things I've either been involved in or applied to, or would like to apply to. So I think it's a good sort of starter kit. And in terms of groups that support women journalists, I've been really involved in a lot of different groups, and here are some of them here. Women Action in the Media, Journalism and Women's Symposium, Women's Media Center. SheSource, which is part of Women's Media Center, is a really excellent resource. You should contact them to get listed as an expert, and then through them, they will direct media interviews your way. I've been interviewed on Spanish television via SheSource. I've gotten a lot of interesting opportunities, and it's a good support system. And then for those of you who are really, really just starting out, I would recommend taking a pitch writing class, and I've listed one here that I really, really liked. I take classes all the time online with friends of mine or people I really admire. I think it's always good to keep learning. There's so many people with really extensive knowledge who are willing to share that, and so I'm a real fan of continued learning, taking photography courses, taking writing courses, all of that. In terms of pitching and fixers, by the time I've always been freelancing, even when I was an academic, I've always written, I've always pitched, I've always had relationships with editors, and they've only grown over time. But I didn't start freelancing until I had, some stable relationships with editors, because you really need people that you can depend upon. And let's see, I pitch to new editors all the time. And you really need to get used to getting rejected, basically. I probably get rejected every day, sometimes within a few minutes of pitching. But on the other hand, you also, like 2 days ago, I just got an acceptance into the Atlantic, and that's the first time I'll be writing for them. So you got to find where your work fits. It's not a personal thing. And in terms of fixers, because I'm working in Mexico, where I have a really good network and I speak the language, I really don't ever use a fixer in Mexico. But when I do need a fixer, I ask, my journalist networks to get recommendations, and I've listed here the Frontline Freelance Register. Social media is really important. I'm sure most of you know that, but I get a lot of my work through social media, and I've met a lot of editors I recently had an editor from the New Yorker reach out to me via Twitter. So I think you really don't underestimate social media, and make an extension of what you love, what you're interested in, and things you want to have conversations about. And I've put here Liz Plank, who's someone who just does a brilliant job using social media, informing people about women's issues, and I really think she is an inspiration. Also, invest in a professional headshot, for social media, for LinkedIn, for whatever. Also, for your bylines, have something professional done. You really cannot underestimate, the use of that headshot. Let's see, location. I mean, this is obviously personal, but when sort of things were heating up with Syria, a lot of people just moved to Syria, really didn't speak the language, didn't know anything really about the region. I really have a problem with that. I think you should be prepared. I think you should at least study the language of where you want to cover. And think about, you want to think about practical things like cost of living, rent, and all that stuff. Work-life balance is something I wanted to address, just because when you are freelancing internationally, you're working from home often, or like me, you're traveling a lot. I've been on the road for basically the past 2 months. You don't have, your schedule is crazy. You don't have like your normal, your gym, your whatever. So you've really got to take care of making a community, and I did that through fellowships. Some of my fellowships gave me mentors or coaches, which is really nice, so I can check in with them. And a photo that I've featured here is a friend of mine, Lola, who's a National Geographic photographer. She's a mother too, and I think she does a really, really good job of balancing, what she loves and her family, and doing incredible work. And I would recommend that you check out her website. Hustle is something I really love, and I think if you are interested in reading a really good book, you should check out Drawing Blood by Molly Crabapple. She is the essence of hustle. Lots of freelancers have two kinds of work, sort of the brilliant creative projects, and then the more corporate, mundane work that pays regularly. Fact-checking, translation, guidebook writing, book editing, video editing, wedding photography, all these things. And I think it's really important to recognize that. For example, obviously I always feature my creative work, as the essence of what I do. But in the background, I do a lot of translation. Translation pays really well. It's something that I like, that I learn from. I do book checking, book editing and video editing, all these things that, are creative and that relate to what I do, but also that pay the bills, because, I don't ever know when my writing projects are going to pay me. I have a project from last October that just the editor emailed me last week and said, "I'm really sorry, we still haven't paid you. We're working on it." You think, how long, what is it going to take, a year for them to pay me? And I don't know. And oftentimes complaining, doesn't necessarily help you get that payment. Right now what I'm doing is I have I have a long form writing project that's taking up 2 to 3 months of my life. It's something I'm really excited about, and it pays pretty well, but pays after publication. So in the meantime, I'm doing a bunch of other work that sort of solve my cash flow issues. So I think it's really good to have several areas that you can work in. Negotiation. This is something I'm really passionate about. Don't assume that you need to work for free to get established. The Huffington Post model. I have a real, make the case that you are good at what you do, you have a knowledge area, and you should be paid for your work. And turn down people that try and take advantage of you. I know people often have this mentality like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this thing for free, I'm never going to publish. Or it's absolutely not like that. When I first started out, I did a lot of things for free. And eventually I sort of drew a line in the sand, and anybody who emailed me, I said, look, if you cannot pay me my going rate, then we can't work together. And that's when my career took off. That's when I got work with the New York Times. That's when I got published in Oxford American. And I think I was afraid that I wouldn't get work. And actually, what happened was the opposite. When you respect yourself, when you show that you have really good work, and when you ask for a rate that is equal to that, people will want to work with you. And just do your research and always negotiate in terms of asking if, I always ask if when I'm writing an article, if people want photos, if they want video, so I can up my rate, by adding those things. Editors, cultivate relationships on Twitter. I love Twitter. Twitter is a great place to meet editors. They often have, like here, Megan Greenwell, she has her email. So you could pitch Esquire, which is amazing, and blind pitches do work. I know people think that they don't, but they absolutely do. That's actually how I got into long reads. I sent the editor a pitch. I didn't know him, and he contracted me to do three pieces. So you really need to follow the people you admire. Another thing is that I think is important is don't ask other journalists for contacts. For example, the New York Times, if you don't have very much experience in the industry, don't assume, you need to do the work before you ask for the contacts. Exercise and emotional stability. This is also really important because I've had periods where I've freelanced where I had no structure to my life, and I got depressed, or I thought, when you're getting rejected all the time, it's easy to sort of get negative. And so I think it's important to combat that by, having, something that you do. You go running or you do yoga, or whatever you can do when you're traveling, things like that. And then one of the last things I would say is just don't compare yourself to other freelancers, because in social media you can spend all day doing that, and it really doesn't do you any good. If you just do the work that you love, people will recognize that, and appreciate it. Genuine work is rare, and eventually it will get you somewhere. And here I'm just going to end with some quotes. The first one is from my dad. The second one is from a poet that I had as a professor, and then the last one's from a writer that I really love. And let's see, I wanted to go ahead and open it up to questions if anybody has any questions.
All right. Hi, Alice. So the first question would be, with blind pitches, you definitely hear that they don't work, so it's kind of nice to hear that every once in a while they do. How do you structure yours when you go ahead and you kind of reach out to someone you don't know?
Well, first of all, I think it's important, like, because I've been freelancing for a while, even I blind pitched the editor at Long Reads. I blind pitched Atlantic, to the email that I found online. It's important to, if you have, by now I do have like Long Reads. I had been interviewed by Long Reads about my book. So I said, hi, so-and-so. I was interviewed by Long Reads, and I saw that on Twitter, actually I saw on Twitter that they're looking for pitches from journalists. I saw that you're looking for this from journalists. I'm based in Mexico. I have this fellowship, and I would love to work with you guys. So, and I think it helped that, I'd already, Long Reads had interviewed me, and I had a fellowship, which is a big deal because then editors know that, like, I have the money to do the travel and all the things implied in sort of an international piece. So I think that really set me up better in terms of getting the attention of the editor. But I was really happy because often, look, a lot of times editors ignore you. So it's nice to know that occasionally something gets through to them.
And when you went ahead and you were pitching, I mean, because it is a form of pitching, when you were applying to all your different fellowships, were there certain things that you would recommend putting in there that maybe you think helped you get those fellowships? Is there anything specific that you can think of that would be smart to have in those applications?
Well, I think some things that helped me In terms of one is my language ability. If you speak multiple languages and you're working internationally, that's a huge advantage. You know, there's a lot of journalists that cover things where they rely on a fixer and a translator because they don't speak the language. And for me, I do all my own translation. So I'm working in another, you know, it's a big expense, an added expense if you don't speak the language, you know, and you have to depend on a translator. So I think that's one thing. And also, all these fellowships require letters from an editor, you know, saying, I support X person. So you need to have a good relationship with editors, which is hard. Editors change jobs every day of the week, and it's really frustrating. Or they, you know, quit, or they, you know, decide to do something else. So it's actually relatively hard to maintain a long-term relationship with an editor, but in terms of getting fellowships, it's something that's important. And then the rest is really your project. Yeah.
Yeah. We have one question from Quinn, and she's saying she's interested in opportunities to like for training for video and audio editing. But you know, they tend to be expensive, and she's asking whether you know of any resources that help freelancers pay for those types of workshops.
Absolutely. Actually, I just applied to a workshop, and a lot of workshops have fellowships. I just applied to a workshop in Mexico City. It's called the Foundry Workshop. It's for photographers. It's really well known, and they have 3 fellowships. A friend of mine got one, Danielle Villasana. She got a fellowship. So it's really, and I find out about these opportunities through all my writing groups, like the Frontline Freelance Register, which does the conflict. People who worked in conflict areas, they constantly post trainings, photography, and these. So I see these things in my groups, and I apply for everything.
No, that's smart.
So,
And
yeah.
also, you know, you have a PhD in Latin American studies, and so you obviously have a lot of knowledge on the area that you're covering. What would you say to people who maybe don't want to invest in like that extensive of an education before they go cover something? What would you recommend as far as like gaining the knowledge to be able to cover a place, like you were saying before, that may not involve
Well,
getting a PhD?
yeah. Well, I think for me, because I love language, like Middlebury Language Schools, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Peter Hessler. He writes for the New Yorker. He used to cover China. He speaks Chinese, and he decided he wanted to move to Egypt to cover Egypt for the New Yorker. He went to Middlebury, which has these incredible, they're like 1.5, 2 month language courses. It's language, culture, everything. And I also studied Portuguese at this program, so it's a brilliant program. So I really advocate for learning culture via language, even if it's, let's say you take 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 1 week, you really pick up a lot of things about a culture that way. So that's something I would recommend.
Yeah. And I guess just closing, what would be just your general recommendation for like a lot of people are just starting out being international freelancers, and I know you said you faced a lot of rejection in the beginning. How do you kind of talk yourself out of that rejected mode once that happens?
Well, I mean, I think it's really hard, and I think, you know, I've failed a lot of times. Right now, I'm successfully freelancing, but I've tried to do it multiple times. Like a year and a half ago, I was trying to freelance full time, and I ran out of money, so I had to go back to working an office job. And I want that to be a realistic, like, you know, I come from a family that doesn't have money. If I run out of money, no one's going to just hand me, you know, like save me. So it's fine if you know, if you have to work an office job, if you know, you do what you have to do, and I always keep writing. Like even if you get rejected, keep writing, and then you have that, and then eventually someone wants it. So I think it's okay to feel rejected and like crappy, but just keep doing the work.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Let's see. No, I think that's it. I really appreciate you hosting this, and anybody who wants to reach out to me can do that.
Thank you so much, Alice, for taking the time to do this. We appreciate immensely. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Really happy we could help you out, and be sure to check out our next couple of talks coming up. We have one tomorrow and we have two next week, okay? So thank you, Alice. Thanks, guys. Have a great day,
Yeah.
okay? Bye.
Bye bye.